My name's Joe Keyport, and you're listening to the Ear Coffee Podcast. For this week's episode, I talked to Kevin and Oscar, two Fargo-based filmmakers who run Chamber 6 Media. I've been aware of the duo for a few months now, as they have been putting out some really cool cinematic work with bands in their area, and now they're preparing to release what they call their biggest project yet, Trip 27. The short film serves as a visual album for the artist Huck, where they've taken 5 of his songs, creating music videos, and weaved them together by a plot based on hitchhiking across the American Southwest in an attempt to find a renewed creative energy. The film will be premiered this Saturday at the Fargo Theater as part of a big event. You'll be able to find a link for tickets as well as some other information in that show notes. Unfortunately, Huck wasn't able to join us for the interview, but we'll be playing his song Cost a little later in the episode. It's Kevin and Oscar of Chamber 6 Media right here on the Ear Coffee Podcast. Guys, how's it going?
Really good. How are you?
Doing pretty well. It's cool that I get to talk to you guys with this project. I know, Kevin, you reached out to me last weekend, and it was like, hey, do you have time? And I was like, of course. I've been kind of following you guys for a little bit and what you guys do, because you're not musicians. Well, you might be, but I only know you from the visual side as filmmakers, from like seeing stuff that you've done. So I'm really glad we get to connect on this. Starting off, I always like to get a little bit of kind of background information. So talk to me about what Chamber 6 Media is and who you are.
Well, we started 2014 officially, and we've been like a creative unit ever since. Kevin and I both we went to high school together.
Okay.
He's 2 years older than me. And we both kind of knew that we were into film, or at least we'd seen like YouTube videos and shit. And
also, we would see each other from across the commons both wearing Smashing Pumpkins and both wearing Cure shirts and stuff like that. So,
and I'd always be like, God, where the hell did he get his? Like, his are so cool. And I'd be super jealous.
eBay. That's what you had to do in 2006 or 7. Yeah.
And so, yeah, over the years, we've sort of been developing our creative process together. We've done a lot of stuff together. I mean, it's kind of insane if you look through the backlog. I mean, we spent about 4 years really just doing anything and everything, so we could just like throw as much against the wall to see what stuck. While at the same time, always knowing that we wanted to do film. It's just like we had to sort of develop a language between ourselves. So, Kevin and I always talk about it as musicians. Like, at a certain point, we started realizing that if you wrote the thing, then you direct the thing. So it's kind of like you write the song and you sing lead on it. And
right.
So really, we kind of see ourselves as more of a band in that sense. And like with Trip 27, like we spent the last 2 years basically releasing singles, and this is like our debut album.
That's even funnier. I didn't even thought about that as the analogy to the band, metaphor that we've always used. But yeah, we before we were like officially Chamber 6 Media, when I was finishing film school, I went to MSUM, Minnesota State University, Moorhead, right across the river in Fargo, and we sort of started getting together, chatting more about film and just life in general and stuff. And then at a certain point, for my senior project in school, we ended up inviting him to, because he wasn't part of film school, but like he had his own, School of Hard Knocks film school with every other, project he could muster up, basically. And we invited him to come help us out on that project. And then since then, we've always liked working together. And so at that point, we were like, trying to meet late at night after work and stuff, like on a regular basis. And then at a certain point, we like decided to name the thing. And since then, it's just been, ultimately, we're just doing whatever we want to do. It's not really, doesn't have much more of a guideline than that, but we just, like making certain types of projects, whether that's, or music videos like I've been doing a lot lately, or with him, he does a lot of videos for hip hop artists in the area and stuff. But that's not how we see ourselves permanently as boxed in. That's one thing we've actively ever fought against, is trying to box ourselves into a particular genre, or whether that's a genre of music or a genre of filmmaking or anything. But those things
are born out of like both loving The Cure and the Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah,
which is funny. Like every album that both of those bands released, and many other bands that we've talked about between ourselves, they're so radically different album to album, and we've always loved that. And we love filmmakers that are like that. Just like the Coen brothers were a great example of that. And we've always just been like, we have to not necessarily make it a point to change at every time we express something, but just follow the muse to the extent that it needs to be followed. So we always support each other in whichever projects we're doing. Kevin comes from a completely different place than I do, but we try to complement each other, try to elevate each other's things by how we can contribute to them. So it's been a really cool collaborative creative process. I mean, it's taken years. I mean, it's been like 7 years of developing it.
And really, it's the past couple that we feel the strongest about, and that we're like, oh, this was when we sort of broke through to a point where we felt like we were actually making the things at a level that we wanted to,
Right. Yeah, so it feels like a Lennon McCartney thing,
Yeah.
It's cool.
That feeds into my like follow-up question, was what your dynamic is like as filmmaker, because you mentioned, I was looking through the credits of what you had released so far, and the writing role switches based on whoever literally wrote the project, but the other stuff kind of falls in as you need it. Kevin, it seems like you primarily edit a lot of the content, and like cinematography and some of the other roles are fluid.
I edit a lot. I edit like Huck's projects in particular. Like we were just having a conversation the other day about that ever since I edited the first one we made for him, Walking on Glass, which was about 2 years ago, I realized like that's the way I communicate with his projects, and that's how I can do that. So since we've made a lot of projects with Huck in particular, like we've made 2 straight up videos that are just his songs, 2 songs that he's either that he's collaborating with someone on, and then now the Trip 27, which is 5 more basically. So I do edit a lot, and a lot of that is because I've just been editing Huck's projects a lot, and so I see myself as like all 3, director, cinematographer, and editor. But when it comes to like the abundant nature of the projects we've done with him, it just editing is at the forefront for sure.
Yeah, and it really comes down to like where our strengths lend to like whatever project we're doing. And so like whenever Kevin's doing one of his projects, it really depends on where I'm going to fit into that. So like recently I've been shooting his stuff, which has been really cool. And but sometimes you fit in different roles, and that's what's been so interesting about Chamber 6 Media as like just as a collective unit, or like a collective art movement or art unit, is that we're kind of fluid in what we do. And really, like if you were to be there on set with us, one person takes credit for the thing, but actually
everything is so much fuzzier than you would see written, in the credits.
Yeah. Like for example, this past, one of the videos that Kevin's editing right now, he got to a certain point, and then I was like, well, what if you did this? And then that took it to a different level, and it's just like, Kevin's still the editor, but I just kind of like, blurred out
it's the beauty of working in a media kind of field, is like, you have a role, but you're gonna do a million other things like when it comes to that, and that's just kind of the fun collaboration of ideas and having someone to work with.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have it Oh, I was just gonna say I wouldn't have it any other way either, too, because I like, even as a director, trying to fiddle with the lights or helping settle some. It's nice when you're directing and you have enough crew when you don't necessarily have to do that, because you can pay attention to other things. But like for me, part of the joy of filmmaking is getting your hands dirty in various.
Yeah, I was
ways.
gonna say, like, it's one of the greatest joys of filmmaking is being able to be so fluid on set, because you become a stronger filmmaker that way. If you are so hyper focused on just one discipline, you're gonna miss a lot. And so like as we've collaborated, like we've both gotten really strong in places that we've been weak in the past. And so it's yeah, it's great. It's like, I think something that people need to hear more of, especially creatives, that you should abandon this notion that you're only going to do one thing. It's like, no, you have to do every single thing, or at least know a little bit about every little thing, in order to be an excellent filmmaker, musician, artist, whatever.
Well, absolutely. So how did you get connected with Huck then? Because you've worked on a number of music videos with him, or just projects in general leading up to this, but now you're doing this big thing that is Trip 27. We'll talk about that in a second, but where did that connection with Huck begin and kind of grow from to here?
Yeah, so Huck and I, we had admired each other's stuff for a while, and we had connected. Well, it's funny because we had met one time at like a Chipotle, and I was like, "Oh, hey, what's up, man?" And I weirdly remembered that, and I've talked to him about it since, and he's remembered that too. He's like, "Yeah, it's kind of weird. Like, any other time I wouldn't have remembered that, but that time we did." And so we just kind of connected, and we met. And actually, when we met, I was like in such a low place creatively, because I felt like I was at the end of my rope. And when I met him, his enthusiasm for his own work, or his own process, was so invigorating. I was like, holy shit, like that's what it's all about, man. Like you should be excited about your own shit. You should be excited about the stuff you're creating. And he showed me this song that I really, really liked. And I was like, all right, man, like we got to do this. We got to do something together. And that was like the beginning. Of we hung out, and that day that we hung out, he actually showed me the sketches for the stuff for Trip 27.
Okay.
And he showed me one of the hooks, which is the first song on the project, or at least the film version. And I was like, I don't know what that is, but whatever that is, I want that when you finish that. And and that was actually where the seeds were planted. Like he was like, at some point, I want, and this is Huck saying this. He said, at some point he'd love to do like a visual album. And I was like, that sounds great to me, And
right.
so, and it's taken like 2 years of us doing as much as possible, like music video wise, and bouncing off like as many ideas as possible, and working for like, trying to find money just to make the projects happen. To get to this point that we're at now, which we just made a movie.
Yeah, absolutely. So from the beginning, because I saw Huck on Instagram talking about the album he was making, or he made, talking about how it's taken him, years to put it together. And you said, you heard the early sketches. So then was the movie and the album like kind of concurrently a goal for that from the beginning, or was that something that kind of formed within the last more recently?
Yeah, it sort of formed out of it. Like we had said, it'd be awesome to do it. I didn't know it was going to be that project. But then around I think it was last year, we did another music video for him called Tell Me. And at that point, I think
the first thing we did out of the pandemic, or like since the pandemic started, that was the first project. And
we he had shown me, I think he was probably 75% done with the album. And he showed me basically the structure of it. And there's a lot of little radio-y sounding parts in between the songs. And then that's when he told me the name, Trip 27, and what it meant to him and stuff. And so that's where that was another seed. I was like, oh, well, what if it was like a road trip? And so as time went on, he then showed me the actual album. This is back in November, and I listened to it for like 2 weeks straight, nonstop. And that's where I started dreaming up all this stuff. It's funny because I listened to it, and there was like 5 songs there that I was like, we got to try, if we're gonna do this, we got to do like 5.
Mhm.
And I showed that to him, and he was like, "Whoa!" Like I was expecting 1, I wasn't expecting 5.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how that was born out of that, was just listening to it and then realizing that that's what the project needed.
Mhm.
It actually needed to be this big road trip.
Yeah.
I remember just really
Oh, go
quickly
for it.
here is that probably the first day we were filming with Huck up at his place, we filmed a couple scenes in his little home studio, which is just like, a second bedroom. And I remember, hearing whispers, and you probably brought it up to me, personally about Trip 27, just as like, preliminary conversations you had with him, just getting to know the guy. And then I remember seeing too, his folder open on his computer of just songs he was working on, and a lot of those I still recognize the titles, like Arizona in particular, from just being stuff he was working on at that time. So it's just kind of funny that we've been there since the beginning of all that and where it's at now.
Yeah, and he's like, Huck is like one of the most talented and prolific songwriters that I know of. And especially like we're in Fargo, like the hip hop scene is very, very small.
Yeah.
I mean, there's like the metal scene's healthy.
Mhm.
The rap scene is like you have to pick them out, and they're very talented people. But something about Huck, and I mean this sincerely, he is like so extremely talented that I can't believe he's not more popular. Everything about his songs are so melodically sound that he's just like literally like a diamond in the rough, talent wise.
And just the sheer number of like beats and stuff he's creating all the time is kind of absurd.
I think he told me the other day that he had hit like 100 beats a couple weeks ago of this year alone.
Wow.
That he's made. And yeah, it's just like this guy's like nonstop, and the pandemic also kind of halted everything, so he's been able to focus on that more. But just the guy's super inspiring. And so like what we really had to think about was like, well, how can we match something? Well, how can we match his own creative output? We have to go as big as possible, without losing ourselves in it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and listening like rudimentary, or the just kind of listening through Huck's music. I didn't know about him before Kevin reached out to me and was like, "Hey, this is what we're doing." Like his music feels very cinematic, like it's almost made for like to be a part of a film project at some point. Just the way it works and it flows, and it needs something to bring it, to not that it's hindered by just being an audio medium, but you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm. No, I think that's what we connected to immediately.
And definitely part of Walking on Glass. I mean, I talked about this the other day with Oscar, but we have about a 30-second to a minute breakdown in the middle of the first video we ever did with him, where he like robs a gas station, and we just basically had him slow down his own beat so that we could make it into a score for that moment, because it worked perfectly as it was. It just needed to be sort of elongated. And yeah, so it's like you hit the nail on the head with how we sort of resonate with his music is visually.
Yeah.
And before all this, the cinematographer on Trip 27, Nick, he and Huck have been friends forever, and they had done a video together. They had done 3 videos together that were kind of stitched together, so it was just like 7 minutes long or something like that. And it was, I think, segments of each song that he was releasing. And that was really kind of a template for him visually, was seeing that this guy wasn't just making hip hop videos. He was doing something that was like actually kind of striving to be cinematic, if not already, cinematic. And so that just gave me so much confidence. I was like, wow, this guy actually cares about his visuals in a way that not a lot of people do. Because like the thing that bothers me most about just music videos in general, but in particular hip hop music videos, is that they're just about the lifestyle.
Mm.
So they're just there to like show off the lifestyle. That can be cool. I mean, there are like so many badass videos like
Oh
that.
yeah.
But I think for our own taste, you know, we're striving to do something that's a movie.
Yeah.
You know?
And-
And he was totally along with that.
And why like try to ape a style that's already, you know, being done by a bunch of people, especially when, like you said, the Fargo hip hop scene is so like small and insular. You want to create something that stands out among even like say nationally recognized projects. Why do something that's already being done a million times? You know, not that it's bad.
Exactly.
But we're just
Yeah, no, and I think for us as artists, it's so important for us to be impressed first than
Mhm.
anything else. So we're not there to make something that's just gonna sort of like be a
Mhm.
music video. Like, oh hey, we did it. We made a music video. No, it's like we have to be really happy with it first. And you know, that comes with striving to be bigger than your surroundings.
And that's also like when we shoot stuff, I think there's a lot, you know, most artists or musicians in particular, you know, they're broke.
Mhm.
And so when they approach us about filming something, sometimes they don't necessarily understand that it's like, no, like we have like a fully fleshed out sort of like approach and process to things visually, and a lot of times that requires a little bit more production value and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's why a lot of times I don't direct as many projects as Oscar too, is because the things that I do a lot of times end up having weird big practical monsters and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so that takes time to build those things or to pay for those things and things like that. And so you know, we're not just whipping out the camera and, you know, like, oh, this is good enough. No, it's like we've cultivated a methodology over several years and developed our like film language to not just haphazardly do things.
Yeah,
you know,
you're not just two dudes with like a camcorder. You Chamber 6 has an image, a brand, something that like there's a reason why you're coming to you. Someone's going to come to you guys to make a project.
I mean, but we were those guys too, you know. We were those guys with the camcorder, and that's something that that we actually, you know, we've talked about this recently, where it's like it's about finding that balance, right? That fun balance of like remembering why it's fun and still striving to be cinematic. And but yeah, for whatever reason, you know, the name Chamber 6 Media, there is a specific ethos to it, and there's like a specific like thing that we're striving for inside or under that umbrella, and we're just there, you know, and we're just, you know, not trying to get wet by the ideas, if that makes sense, you know, because it's all streaming from somewhere else, you know.
So, Oscar, take me through the plot of Trip 27, the film, because you wrote the script for it and you got the 5. It features 5 songs. Is the whole album just 5 songs? I'm assuming it's much longer given.
No, I think it's, probably 10.
it's either 10 or 12. I can't remember which.
And actually, I think we feature probably 7 songs total. Kevin would know.
Oh, yeah, because there's 5 songs primarily, but we do use the beats of a couple other songs as score. So, yeah.
Yeah, plot-wise, Huck finds himself in a situation where he's struggling to have a creative output, and so he decides to take a road trip. And along this road trip, he gets picked up by a random man, and they go on a psychedelic adventure together. So every music video is a chapter of the story, and so if you can imagine it like Pink Floyd The Wall, but not as depressing.
Still somewhat sad at points, but yeah.
But it's
no razor blades.
The progression of the story is every music video sort of progresses the story visually, and like the lyrics don't really sort of match with what's happening. It's not like
They're not literal or anything. Yeah.
they're not literal, but emotionally and
Mhm.
cinematically, they all fit along this thing, and he gets taken on a path um, to
Yeah.
to and through the Southwest.
I wanted to talk about shooting because you shot on like a bunch of you traveled a bunch from what I understand to shoot this. We'll get to that in a second. But with picking, did the songs kind of jump out to you after as you like to create the narrative, or were you like you had this idea, you had talked to Huck about like what the idea or like the theme, and then went in and picked? What was that balance?
Yeah, I think it's hard to remember
Mhm.
how it all came together, but like it was. I know for sure I had the vague concept right of a road trip,
Mhm.
and I knew specifically so the song that I had first heard ever was Vamonos, and that's the first song on this on
In
the
the
visual
film.
album. Yeah, like
Yeah.
the album, it's ordered differently. But basically, I took the songs after I listened to the album so much and ordered them in a way that I thought would fit a narrative arc.
Okay.
And so I knew that I wanted to start it with the one song that I had heard for the first time,
Mhm.
and I knew what the vibe was of that video from the beginning, like
Yeah.
2 years ago. I just didn't know how that was going to fit in, and it took. So his new album opens with a song called Arizona, which is one of his
Mhm.
singles, and that was kind of like a logical stopping point for me. I was like, well, shit, like what if we end up in Arizona?
Yeah.
So in the progression of the film, that's actually the last song, and so from there, really it was sort of listening and picking and choosing the songs um, that I thought would fit this narrative arc,
Mhm.
then sort of building a story out of that. It's actually kind of funny, a lot of albums are, they have filler and stuff, but like Hawk is one of those artists again that is so prolific
Yeah.
that literally every song feels like a single.
Okay.
So it was super easy for me to pick
Mhm.
songs, and it actually I've been thinking about it a lot because I didn't even consult with him. I was like, hey, here's the songs I want to do,
Yeah.
and he was like, okay, and so I kind of feel like you know he he probably should have picked those singles out, but I think we were vibing
Mhm.
we were on the same path anyways, that I think we came to the same conclusions too. And so it all just worked out. And that's where it gets hard to take credit for anything
Mhm.
because it's like, did I come up with this? Or,
Yeah.
like, was it just born out of the inspiration? Or
Yeah.
was it always.
Was it like, what was destined to come out of this project,
Mhm.
given enough time?
And that's basically how everything was built. And from there, it was really about figuring out how to make it work. I mean, I have detailed notes of everything.
Yeah.
I've kept the journal throughout this whole process, and I know it started on November 15th is when he sent me those files, and by Christmas I had a plan for how we were going to get it done, and so
We were filming by March, right?
yeah,
Too?
we were supposed to film in February, but then it was
Yeah.
like also the seasons and COVID and everything got in our way because like we had such a mild winter that I thought that February was going to be too cold for us, but then it like ended up kind of kicking us in the ass, and we were like, oh, we have to move this further along,
Yeah.
And so, it's been a wild journey, man.
I was gonna ask, since you like Huck didn't have a ton of input on the songs you picked from the record. When you
I think, I mean, that's not fair to say because obviously I showed it to him, and he's like, this one, maybe not this one,
Yeah, okay. So I was wondering when you showed him what the original plan was, what his like response to seeing it like a little more visualized than just, some discussions you'd been having leading up to, the plan.
If I remember correctly, I videoed him. It was like during COVID, the height of COVID, so we just like FaceTime. And Huck is
Okay.
one of those guys who's just like, all right, let's do it. He's like, cool, that sounds cool. Well, let's do it. Either that or like he'll send us text.
He is the biggest emoji user of anybody I know.
Nice. Just like super laid back.
Yeah, and just always like, that doesn't translate to the podcast audience, but just imagine, the smiley face that's so smiled, it's like, I don't know, rosy,
just
and,
like,
and so on that one.
Kevin, while editing this project, since you've worked on, you've edited a lot of all of the projects you've done with Huck, what was like in mind while making, like in your mind, trying to keep true to the vision that like the story had and Oscar had created with Huck? And I mean, obviously you probably were talking in with that too. It's not like it's just like dropped on your plate. But what did you have in mind as you were like working on that project to make sure, like Trip 27 is like a fully realized stuff? Because like I'm talking too much in this question, but
that's okay.
Editing is a big part of like how something feels and looks and stuff like that outside of the written narrative itself. So what was in your head while working on this project as an editor?
I think like, there's a couple things that one, I trusted myself to understand that because I've worked with Huck projects enough where I kind of know what they're supposed to feel like. So that helped a lot. Another thing that helped besides trusting myself is Oscar has really trusted me a lot with this project, and that really just, I think, helps, or it's built over the course of, 7+ years. But like, we've had our moments of communication about it and stuff, but there are times where I'll go pretty long stretches without showing him anything, and then we'll meet up. And part of that was, he got married this summer and stuff like that. So there was definitely, impediments to us convening regularly about it. But in general, I broadly, have an implicit understanding about what Huck videos feel like to me. This is just the full movie version of that. So, I don't know. I guess I don't know if I had a complete overriding, tentpole as much as I did the feeling and trusting myself on knowing when to cut. And, my biggest guiding principle when editing is like I look through, everything, and I just like to generally move to what's most interesting in each take. And most of the time that steers me in the right direction. There are times when that like will make a really messy first draft, like for Tell Me last year when we did that was kind of incoherent at first, and then that gets honed in over time. But in general, like I'm a visual person. That's why I'm a filmmaker, and so I trust what I'm seeing on the footage to do most of the storytelling, and then from there using cuts as a way to just simply elevate it.
Yeah, and I think for this project in particular, it was really helpful that we had beats that we had to get to, and so like the structure was on the script. It was like this thing goes to this thing, and this thing goes to that thing, and just like fill it in between. So like the bones were there, the outline was there. It was just about figuring it out. And like Kevin said, like we've been going at it for so long that it helps so much that we had built up the callus to do a project like this over 2 years. We actually found what Huck's projects need. And so it was a no-brainer for me to be like, well, you figure it out, and if it's something that I don't like, then I'll tell you, Yeah.
And yeah. And he has.
And it's that goes with any other project too, it's just about finding it, but like knowing the vibe. That's basically
and that's also something that does take time. There are times like anybody, when they receive notes on something that they do, is going to be a little bit like butthurt about it for 5 minutes or something, and then you reassess stuff and you sort of take it in and you digest it and then you just keep moving. And there's not a lot of time or productive value that comes from just stewing over, someone not thinking that your initial crack at something wasn't amazing. Everybody does rewrites on a script or a paper or whatever. It's like that always is just what's going to happen. So, our relationship is strong enough where we can not only be honest with each other, but we know how to do it without not only making it personal, but not taking it personal either.
Yeah.
So,
and also too, when you get notes, and that's what's great, going back to the creative collaborative thing, they're seeing something that you don't see, and you have to trust that. You have to trust that that's they have a point, and
it's not malicious.
And a lot of times, I don't even think we've ever had a moment where we've given each other notes and been like, no, that note is completely wrong.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of. I'm sure we've disagreed about something sometimes, but usually after either one of us making the case to the other, or one thing that I've found in the past is that if either of us tries to explain what we're doing rather than just showing it, it's like the other person will look at the other one with suspicion a little bit at first, and then after they show it, you're like, oh, okay, I see what you're saying. That looks awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, that type of thing is bound to happen, but yeah.
Hey there, it's Editor Joe, not podcast host Joe. Like I mentioned in the intro, Huck wasn't able to join us. He originally was planning on joining us to talk more about the music, and since, we didn't really want to speak to his artistic vision too much, we decided that it's better to just, play a single off of the album, and one that is going to be In Trip 27. So here's Huck's song, Cost.
Did I take a loss? Pain that I bring between lost and a self-made boss. Did my little thing, what's the cost? Did I take a loss? Pain that I bring between lost and a self-made boss. Running place like I'm warming up. Did my little thing, got on base, ain't no starving us. Hungry still though, I'ma eat, bet on me like Pete. Hits growing like some roses, bear a self-made peak. The climb don't have to be the steep, eat on mountain sheep. Try not to follow what the hollow bring, the knees won't cease. I'm a fucking freak, man, no sleep. Yeah, insomniac to all of that, to everything they speak. Don't wanna hear it, no. So long I feared it. The dread just about drowned me, had me feeling like a spirit, yeah. Don't wanna hear it, no. So long I feared it. The dread just about drowned me, had me feeling like a spirit. Hey, did my little thing, what's the cost? Did I take a loss? Pain that I bring between lost and a self-made boss. Did my little thing, what's the cost? Did I take a loss? Pain that I bring between lost and a self-made boss. Did my little hey, did my little take a loss? Did my little thing, hey, did my little fucking cost? Did my little thing, hey, did my little take a loss? Did my little thing, hey, did my little seems I lost a little vibe somewhere around 25. And that really hit me fast. Jamal Charles in his prime. I'm the chief of the shit. Run this like Olympian. You Lou and I'm my son. No caliber, this another one. Welcome to my happy place. I'll give you just a little taste. I'm Kittle through the middle. Man, that's touchdowns on touchdowns. I perform, they erupt now. I don't come down. Need that shit to calm down. So calm down. I'm yelling at myself now. Fell into the normalcy, you gave up like a wishing well. I wish you well, cause there's no hell, and heaven's just a state of mind. Life's easy, make of it, you gotta try. And stop asking why, for a second of your time. Hey, get my little thing, what's the cost? Did I take a loss? Pain that I bring between lost and a self-made boss. Did my little thing, what's the cost? Did I take a loss? Pain that I bring between lost and a self-made boss. Did my little, hey, did my little take a loss? Did my little thing, hey.
More of a broader question, since you have Trip 27, which the reason we're here talking, and then you had a project with Maul that like intrigued me too. Working with a project that is so beholden to the music that like you're pulling from, how like tied to the original like work are you when working on something like that? You know, like I know Trip 27, you know, is from like it pulls on the theme of the album, but like you pull those songs out, you're still trying to tell your own story. Do you feel like the broader record you need to still be like attached to it, or do you feel the ability that you can maybe move away a little bit from it, still tell a story that the songs fit into, but if that makes sense?
Yeah. There's 3 phases to any film that you make or any music video. There's the one that you dream up, the one that you make, and then the one that comes out of it. And so you're making 3 different things, so you can't be precious with anything. I will say though that because we've gotten so much better in the last couple of years, us translating what we want has gotten way better. And so we've gotten way closer to what's in the mind's eye than we ever have before. But that's not to say that there isn't compromise on every vision, you know?
Or just us, you know, bumping up against the laws of physics or something. You know what I mean? Like something that's in your head, you don't realize like, oh, this actually, there's no way to execute this reasonably in person, you know?
And, you know, Kevin can attest to this because like Song of the Resurrector or Monarchy of Molt, the music video, I mean, you know, he had his vision of it, and then it was like a refining process to make it a reality.
And some of that has to happen in the moment because, you know, for that project in particular, we're shooting up in northern rural North Dakota at this weird monument at, you know, from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. And you know, you realize, okay, it's 2:30 right now. We have 5 shots left. You know, how can we mash these together in a way that's still coherent and stuff?
For the shoot, because it's a hitchhiking road trip kind of film, or that's literally what the film is. What you traveled a fair bit to get all the shots and locations. So talk to me about, you know, essentially filming on the road. You know.
So, yeah, it was something that I had to plan rigorously. Everything had to be very. It was weird. It was like it both had to be planned like very well, but also we had to be loose in case shit went sideways.
Yeah,
and that always happens. And again, with experience, we've known like, well, something happens, and I guess we'll just make it up as we go along.
Yeah,
and so so we went from Fargo to Colorado Springs, and into Flagstaff, Arizona. And so along the way, we filmed whenever we could and what was according to the schedule. And so
that meant like there was 4 days over a week where we drove for over 12 hours.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Which, yeah.
The last day was the roughest one.
I can imagine.
That was the day that I was like nodding off and like.
And, you know, you can envision the home stretch, and that's all you're kind of waiting for is the home stretch.
And it keeps getting delayed because we keep having to take a piss or like we took the wrong turn, you know, or
eat or whatever.
Yeah. And also maybe it was like the accumulation of like the amount of cannabis that we had ingested throughout the entire trip, you know.
we went through 2 legal states, and you know, so things like that are bound to happen, especially with a group of 6 artists
making a psychedelic road movie.
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like it's required at that point, you know?
Oh, I mean, yeah. Anybody that enjoys this movie is not legally allowed, or not allowed to be against the legalization of marijuana. That's my opinion.
So then was the shoot was all literally like, what was like, how many days did it take? Because was it 4 or did you?
No, it took it was a 7-day trip, right?
Okay.
The way it worked, I think we filmed on probably 5 of those days, 4 or 5 of them.
Yeah.
That sound right to you?
I'd say about 5. Like, it was like drive 1 day, film 1 day, drive, film, drive. And then it was just like.
And a few of those days where it was just pure 12-hour driving, there would be like one stop where we were like, okay, let's get out because this scenery is too beautiful. So for half an hour, we'd be on the side of the road or something like that.
Yeah.
With something like that where you're traveling such a long distance, how did like location scouting and all that stuff work for you? Is it like you pulling up Google Earth and like
I did so much research. It was like there was like a month there that every single day I was researching something.
I was getting so many links texted to me about national parks and stuff from him at that time.
I was like looking into like caves we could go into, and then I was like, I can't do that. And so, but what was interesting was that we basically we had amassed all these locations that we could visit, but then what ended up happening was like we kept finding random things that we'd be like, oh, stop, the light looks beautiful here. Let's just jump out and film this. So it's a mixture of both. It was such a lightning in a bottle type of trip where we knew we knew what the goal was, and we went hunting, essentially. We went hunting for something that we knew was out there, but we just didn't know what it looked like. And so
serendipity was our key vocabulary word over the course of the trip, because there was so many moments like that where it was just like, wow, like how could there have been such a confluence of like perfect, location and other elements like trains and stuff like that just sort of like all work together to find us with something amazing, and one thing that helped in the location scouting department is that our cinematographer Nick actually lives in Colorado Springs right now. So
nice.
So he was able to like go investigate some of those spots and forests or up near Pikes Peak and stuff like that to just make sure we weren't in for any nasty surprises, before getting somewhere,
When you finally kind of moving then along, when you finally had the ability to like sit down as a group, were you able to like sit down and watch the whole thing like once you got done editing it, you're like, let's like have a watch party to see like what this full project looked like? Or
so it's like, it's not even quite done. I would say it's somewhere in the 95 to 97% vicinity. Right now, mostly what's being worked on is like sound mixing and Foley work and stuff. So the short answer is no. But we had, almost every night while we were like in Arizona and stuff like that was a big watch party, of the dailies. That's what that's called is, we just would watch everything back and, get a sense of what we had done for the day. And those were always just like really inspiring and invigorating, and so, our crew, their first watch is going to be at the theater. Which I kind of prefer it that way.
Okay. Yeah. What was it like then being able to see those dailies back? Because I always like that, like hearing about that moment when you get to see whatever you're working on and you're like, oh, this has the potential to be like, this is real now. This isn't like an idea or like a sketch.
Well, so the interesting thing about this project was that because it was so big and we started in March, we filmed like over a weekend every month. And so we'd spend time to like go through this footage, be like, okay, this worked, that didn't work. Here's how we're going to shape it, blah, blah, blah. And we felt pretty good about it leading into it. We're like, okay, this looks great. We did one shoot in like a controlled setting that we were like, okay, we're really onto something now. But it really, that sort of thing didn't really like kick into the next gear until we were in Colorado and we shot some stuff in some woods. And we were like, okay, no, this thing is going to be amazing.
Okay. Yeah.
And then it only got better when we got to like certain scenery in New Mexico and Arizona and stuff. Because then it was just like, oh, wow. Like, it's not fair that we don't have this at our disposal at all times.
Well, it just came to me like, this is such you had to get it right the first time, essentially. Or you had one time to get it right. Because you're like, it's not like you can just take another week to drive that loop to try and, capture the magic you potentially missed. Was that like a stressor then kind of looming over you a little bit?
Always.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say not really for me. Probably for him, because since I was the editor, I didn't really have a specific on-set role other than just sort of fill the cracks where needed, and just to consult with Oscar and so on. And so my part of that was kind of low stress, and I'm sure for him that trip actually has a totally different tenor in a certain way than it does for me. I mean, for me, it was just like, wow, this is really fun. But I wasn't trying to absolutely coordinate and get every, emotional note right and all that other stuff, So it's, it's just funny how that works.
Well, it was because Oscar, before we started filming and before Kevin, you popped onto the call, Oscar called this one of the biggest projects you've ever done as Chamber 6 Media.
Oh, yeah.
So adding that layer on top of we have one shot to film this, just I can only imagine the anxiety.
Yeah. I think too, though, the thing that's been propelling me is that we've kind of been ready for this moment for a long time. At least it's been in our bones since we were in high school.
Yeah.
And I've known that as ambitious young lads, you want to make something that's going to last forever. And I really thought that, and I still think that this project was that opportunity, was to be able to do something that, if this is the only chance that we ever get to do something, we might as well make it as good as possible. And nothing's guaranteed. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. And with COVID, people are dying left and right. I'm going into my 30s. Kevin just turned 31. You might as well just go out guns blazing, man, and just die on your sword. If you're gonna fail, at least fail trying.
Well, you when we started this conversation, you called yourself a band, and this is your debut album. This is a hell of a debut album to start off with. Then you're like, this is it. We can call it. It's our mark.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because I don't know. It's I feel like it'll never be that feeling will never be satisfied. So I'm already thinking about what's next.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's both. And I would consider this our biggest project, even though it's not going to be quite our longest, because we had The New Direction was a documentary we made about a venue in Fargo, and that's going to be probably about 5 minutes longer than this will end up being. But the amount of work and editing and effects and titling and creative ideas and just travel, all of it, I would say this is pretty close to the amount of work all the rest of our projects are combined, I would say. It's pretty remarkable that a lot of the brunt of this work has been done over the last 3+ months. Normally a project like this is going to take you probably a full year to make, and we'll have it done in about 8 to 9 months since you really started listening to that album.
So you're going to be debuting this at the Fargo Theater then?
Yep, August 28th at 7 p.m. We're doing the main room, and it's the other thing that we're doing for this project. Kevin and I care so much about the theater experience, and with COVID and stuff sort of stunting any of that sort of interactions or any of those sort of
public events in general, kind of. Yeah,
we're going all out. So we're doing some cool vintage pre-roll stuff. We're going to be showing our old music videos. So it's going to be an event, and it's going to be event specific what we're creating.
Yep. So even if you're able to see it later in some other way, it won't be like what we're doing the actual night we're debuting it. So hopefully that gives people incentive to actually come, and
and then as well with that, you can get tickets for the event. Where can people purchase those?
We have an Eventbrite page. That's where you can specifically buy them. We have obviously our Facebook event as well, but if you just search like Trip 27 Fargo, it should be the top result. Yeah, they're $10 a piece, so maybe a tiny fee on Eventbrite. Otherwise, we're going to hopefully by the beginning of next week have locations where you can buy physical or tickets in person. Whether that's to avoid fees or whatever. But we're hoping to do like music stores and stuff like that. So and I've designed multiple items of merch for this that I'm really happy with and tie into the psychedelic nature of this project. So, whether you live in Fargo or not, you're more than welcome to buy them.
And where can people pick up merch?
Chamber6media.com/merch should cover it. And we also have a whole Trip 27 page if people want to watch the trailer. There's chamber6media.com/trip-27. But that, if you just go to our website, it should be pretty obvious how to get to any of those spots. But yeah.
Finally, where can people connect with you online?
So Chamber 6 Media is a really good way to find us, but also you can find me on Instagram at Fargo Güero. So my artist name is Güero, means white boy in Spanish. You spell that FARGOGUERO. And you can find Kevin at
it's Jarfarama, that's how you pronounce it. It's a dumb thing that I thought of like 10 years ago. So it's JARFERAMA. So, but if you go to our Chamber 6 pages, there's usually a link to our personal stuff. So,
well, cool. Kevin, Oscar, thank you so much for taking some time to chat with me about your film. If those listening have some time, they should head out to Fargo and make sure they listen to it or go watch it. Go watch it because it's a cool experience, and you're doing the whole theater thing. So adds a whole other layer of cool.
And you should listen to it too. The Trip 27 album comes out 2 days before the film. Comes out on Thursday the 26th. And you can find Huck by going on Spotify and just looking up HUCK with a period at the end. And listen to the album because it's great.
Yeah, and you can get familiar with the songs and then come into the film with a fresh perspective and see how they're interpreted and so on.
Well, cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Joe. It was awesome.
The Ear Coffee Podcast is a companion to the blog of the same name. If you like this episode, please leave us a rate and review so we can stand out among the other music podcasts. You can follow us at Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Ear Coffee. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.